Welcome to this edition of Journals of Spiritual Discovery, brought to you by spiritualteachers.org. I'm your host, Sean Nevins. Hello and welcome to this edition of Journals of Spiritual Discovery. Just a quick note before we start this interview. I wanted to remind you all that the TAT Foundation's April meeting is fast approaching. That will be April the 12th through the 14th in North Carolina. The theme of this meeting is Look Closer, which was inspired by these lines from William Blake. To see a world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. These TAT events are always tremendous opportunities to meet with authentic awakened teachers in a very informal and accessible venue. This particular April event will also be the first time John Troy has participated. You might be familiar with him from a video with Robert Saltzman where he critiques a number of well-known spiritual teachers. I'm sure that will make for an interesting Sunday afternoon session at the meeting, to say the least. To find out more about the meeting and to register, go to tatfoundation.org. That's tatfoundation.org and see the events page. And now on to this edition of Journals of Spiritual Discovery. All right, so my guest this month is Patrick. He is one of the authors of the new book from the TAT Foundation called Message in a Bottle. And it is basically a collection of stories from different seekers who either are or have been involved in the TAT Foundation, telling a bit about their stories and what they've learned along the way, and as well as a message in a bottle that they might give to their past selves. So I thought it was a really interesting concept for a book. I haven't read the whole thing yet. I've read a good chunk of it, and a lot of different voices are in it. And it just struck me that, it might be really neat to speak with one of the contributors and learn a little bit more about how they got involved in the project and perhaps some insights that they got about themselves and the value of doing a project like this. So that is what led me to Patrick. And first off, I just wanted to thank you, Patrick, for volunteering to do this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess my first question for you would be just how you heard about the project and perhaps what it took to convince you to participate in it.
Well, I got the email. It was like it was kind of like a group sent email via that, and it felt like a good idea. So it was a good idea, something good to do. It felt like it was a part of something, that other seekers were going to be a part of, and that felt good to do. So initially that was that was good. And then after a while, thinking about it further, I was like, oh shit, this is going to be a bit difficult because I have to try and dig into this to see what I could write that could be of value.
In terms of the number of drafts that you did of what you submitted, did you have a lot of drafts? Did you have to do a lot of revisions to your work?
Yes, I'd say I was the number one pest when it came to drafts. Because yeah, I did a good few drafts just originally, and then I sent them to Mark, and then he was compiling them. So I think I changed it around 3 times at that point, and then a year after when the book was in publish, then I had to call it back and say, listen, I want to change my piece again because I just reread it, and it just seemed off to me that I was coming from a different place than I was at that time. And so I could see that there was underlying agendas that were easily seen at that point.
And when you say an agenda, what would be an example of something like that?
It's kind of like I know something or something. It's an externally pointed agenda instead of a spiritual agenda of looking within. It was, I don't know how to explain it, but there's certain drives that drive me, but I think they're important drives because they're energy. The ego is energy, and it drives you, what brings you most meaning. I thought Richard Rose was the best psychologist ever. I still do. And so this is my drive. Richard Rose is, people need to know about this guy. And my agenda was not so much looking into myself, it was more trying to, I don't know, back up what he was saying and try and, but in a way that I'm right and everyone else is wrong kind of thing, in that kind of a sense. So it just it was all messed up a bit. So yeah, so it was good because I could see at the point when the book was going to publish, I started getting a bit stressed out over it because it's like, okay, so I need to look at this. There's something not as coherent as it could be, from where I'm coming from. Yeah, kind of. I could see that inner drive was, it wasn't pure. It wasn't as pure as it could be. It helped me. It helped me during that process to experientially see where I was coming from.
And so you're saying that 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 revision that you did about a year later,
Yeah.
sounds like, when the book was about ready to be published, when you looked back upon what you'd written before, it sounds like you're saying that what you had written was more of like was it more like a commentary on Richard Rose's system, or were you using Richard Rose's work to sort of validate what you were doing? Like, what was it about it that wasn't quite satisfactory to you?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. In the sense of validation. Yeah, I think it's validation because I think I got Rose on that level or something, on a psychological level.
To get back to this question of the revisions and rewriting and seeing different aspects of yourself, I was curious, do you keep a journal? Do you have a practice of writing?
Since you asked me that question, like I was looking at an interview with Art, and he was saying that he had a correspondence with you during his time, and you said to him that only if you're a fool if you don't keep a journal.
That
And but yeah, so it's something I actually need to do, as since you even mentioned it, it's kind of things are coming up. And I was looking at a Ryan Holiday thing, and he was saying that Anne Frank used to say, a blank page is more patient than people. And I get the idea there, and he says like that it's so much better to write it down on a piece of paper instead of vomiting your thoughts and feelings on other people. And I think it's good because it does, you do see you get a detachment from things. So it is useful. Yeah, I do it sometimes, when I'm down in the dumps, but I don't do it on a regular basis, which I should.
Yeah, I was curious if you saw any comparison in terms of this writing that you did for the book and journaling, since the topic was essentially yourself and your spiritual path. If you found it to be more intense, maybe, or more productive than your journaling typically is.
Yeah, because the fact that it was going to be published in a book, I don't know whether it made me more objective of my past, and I could look at it more, in a more objective, but also to try and pull out like what's the thread here, and it seemed that I was looking at it more in a nostalgic sense for some reason, with the idea that I was going to be in a book or something. Maybe it's like it's pretty cool that's going to be in a book or something. But it did help me look at it in a much more positive kind of way than I ever did before. I could see things in a better light, I guess,
When you say it made you more objective, would you also say that it made you more truthful or more honest with yourself?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, because it's in a book as well, so you're not going to be totally honest,
Ah,
you know.
right.
So yeah, just to see what would be of value. When I was looking at my biography, I was kind of keeping the concept of Gurdjieff's concept of that people who gravitate to a spiritual path in their adult life, have some kind of seed sown when they're a child. So I try to look into that aspect of it to see if there was a seed sown as a child, where would it have come from? And so that was my that was I was kind of drawn from that kind of idea.
Did you
So I wasn't
find
really
that?
going. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, yeah. I think you're like Jim Burns says about, before puberty or just at the start of puberty, you're in the big questions of life kind of hit you. I think there's an innocence around before that age, just before, teenage life kicks in with all its complications and everything. I think there's the period before that where big picture questions come in, and there's a sense of openness there. And I think I got in kind of contact with that. I wouldn't be very great on memories of my past or whatever. So yeah, so it's cool to kind of try and connect with that kind of earlier openness, because they're kind of feelings that are lost or something. They're feelings that are kind of lost in through time, over time, that you would like to have back. Yeah.
Yeah, that actually is one of the questions I had. One thing that I found very touching in what you wrote is that you said, quote, my favorite line in one of the songs we learned in school was, like the deer that yearns for running streams, so my soul is yearning for you, my God. I have lost that childhood wonder, and maybe that is just normal as I grow older, but I still miss it.
Like when we were younger and we were singing that song, like we sang that song as if pure true, like, we believed it 100%, like it was probably gullibility, but there was also like didn't question it or something, it was like,
Do you feel like you reconnected with any of those younger feelings as a process of working on this?
I think so, because I did look at it, I did look back at it with, as I say, with more positivity than I ever did previously. Whether I can trust that it wasn't contrived because I wanted to paint a nice picture or whatever in a book, or whether that was real, but I think it is real, but it's not as if, but whether my perception of it is real or not, you know what I'm saying? I know it's real, but whether I'm actually connecting back, you know what I'm saying, that whether that's real is the question.
And when you, again, I'm just curious, when you say connecting back, you mean connecting to a memory of a feeling or an experience?
Maybe a time when I was more open and innocent, connecting back to that, maybe.
Do you think that when we connect to something like a memory, some people would say that, well, when is that memory happening? It's not as if we time traveled. What are you connecting to in that moment? Do you think it's there in you, like now? I think you mentioned like maybe it was lost or forgotten. Did you have any experience of it actually being here live in you now?
Yeah, well, the idea then is like that, you're longing for something that you're conceptualizing that was in the past, when everything is inherent in me. I know as a kid I was very anxious anyway, so yeah, I think everything is inherent.
Do you think that you talked about singing that song with other kids? Do you feel like you were unique in the feeling that you connected with that song, or did your friends, like, was it a part of childhood for your friends as well?
Yeah, I think it was, because I think we were very it was strict enough Catholic school, and the teacher was he was very tough guy, but he was definitely, I think he was definitely spiritual, because he was always it was one of the subjects that he really kind of tried to press home. Someone who was genuine, who really kind of was into it.
Yeah, thank you for that. Another part of the book that struck me, I thought was really interesting. You were talking about dreams, and you said, dreams help me take ownership of my own path. They give my path meaning and of its own right, without which I would be lost in admiration of other people's paths and realizations. Which I thought was a really excellent observation given the context this entire book is about. seekers, not teachers, and this is what the teacher says, but seekers, and how are they finding their way on their own path? But I actually don't understand what you mean. Dreams help me take ownership of my own path. Can you tell me more about how that's worked for you?
Well, there's a there's Jim Burns comes up with a line in one of it in his book. He says that what we're really seeking, what everyone is really seeking, is for their own inner guidance. So they're not totally reliant on other outside sources. They want what they really want. What they really, really want is to become their own inner guidance. I think dreams is the guidance is the main kind of what connected me to something kind of higher. It seemed to be some kind of higher communication or something within dreams because I certainly couldn't have put them together myself. There's something of a higher nature, you know, that comes across in dreams. It's the symbolic aspects of dreams, like the Carl Jung kind of psychology of dreams. I would recommend anyone to kind of look into that and just see how other people look at their dreams. And once you start doing that, then it's like a language. You develop like a way of deciphering dreams. I think Bob Ferguson has a great way of interpreting dreams through feelings. You look at the mood and the feelings of the dream. That was a real turning point for me with dreams because then it connected me with feelings. And I guess I was a very instinctual guy. So I had no, I was kind of, um, I was severed away from my feelings, like just completely reactionary kind of um, guy. So once these feelings start coming through, I could catch kind of feeling beliefs about what was driving me and stuff. And once I could see them to just dissolve and disappear, and then you're in a more. It's not as if I'm a massive feeler or anything. I go around feeling all the time. It's not that. It's the feeling beliefs that are kind of phony, and to see that, and then they kind of fall away, and you're left in a more just in a more kind of natural state after them. And I had a dream as well that in the last retreat in Dublin, and it was about where I was at home and we were turning cattle. I went to guard these big cows in a field that were coming out through a gap. That represented to me, you know, I'm not sticking with my own cows. My own cows is my own work that I need to look after. Whereas I was going off to someone else's cows and they're bigger cows and more reactionary. And I was puffing up my ego going after these big cows and they weren't mine. And then my brother, who's like the kind of like I would have saw him as die will when it comes to farming because he's more committed. He was 100% committed to farming, and I wasn't very committed. I just did what I was told to do, but I wasn't really interested. And so my brother just said, "Patrick, come back." And it's like something was calling me back, and so I went back. So there's very symbolic kind of meaning to these dreams. And then there was this branch in the dream that was getting trampled. It's a tiny little sapling. It was getting trampled by the cows. But the branch was vulnerable, like it was completely vulnerable. And then the magic was it was able to shed all its leaves just in one quick blow. It was able to just shed everything. And it was the magic and the vulnerability. And like that was the symbol of it. Then the cows were going around the corner. It was marking like the turning point of my spiritual path was I'm turning a corner if I just focus on my own stuff, focus on me, which I'll never get. I never seem to be able to get around to just doing that. For some reason, I'm very distracted and I'll just read up on all these interesting ideas. But that was the idea in the dream was, you know, to focus on my own work. And then the cows were going home and it was going back to it was like Burns's farm. Burns's farm, but Burns was symbolic to me as well, like Jim Burns, you know, like like coming out of that psychological meltdown or whatever. So that's what Burns like means to me is like kind of like getting above the psychological, getting above the mind. Yeah, so dreams are very symbolic and you know what I mean? I couldn't make that up, but once I see that in a dream, it's like it's kind of higher. It's higher nature or something.
That interpretation that you just gave, my guess would be that first time that you ever decided, hey, I want to look at one of my dreams and see what it means to me, that you weren't able to interpret it so well? I mean, that's a powerful interpretation that you just made. How did you learn to interpret your dreams?
I did a lot of work with Carl Jung's kind of stuff. Found Carl Jung very, very interesting. So would have read up a lot of that. I did psychotherapy as well for a time. That really got the ball rolling, I think. There was like there was a guy continuously kind of probing me, kind of saying, and what does that mean? And what does that mean? And what does that image mean? And so then it really kind of got me kind of focused in on it. And I had more dreams than I ever did during that process. So once you engage in a process like that, it can kick it off. Whereas up to that point, you know what I mean, it needs kind of a stimulus perhaps to kick it off. Whereas if you were just to start by yourself, it would work, like, you know what I mean? Dreams are, everyone has dreams. So I think every single dream has a meaning. Every single dream. Even if they seem so pointless, there's something there, you know. It's replaying how you're being during your days, or it's, you know what I mean? There's
Do you ever get befuddled by a dream where, like, man, I have no idea what that was about, and you have to do you ponder over it if that happens for days, or write about it?
yeah, there is some dreams, but there's, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe I tend to kind of I tend to kind of think I know what they mean. But there could be, your intuition could be wrong, but you're getting the wrong end of the stick from the dream or something.
Oh, I have a question from the audience here. It says, what's your method of dream analysis or processing? I think, meaning, can you say a little more about, you wake up in the morning and you recall a dream, like how are you approaching working with that? Do you write it down immediately? How's
Yeah,
it work?
write it down immediately. Yeah, when I can. Generally in the morning time. I generally get the dreams right before I wake up in the morning. They seem to be the time when I get the dreams. When I get dreams. There was a guy I read a book from, Ralph Allison, who he was kind of like a psychologist dealing with multiple personality disorder patients. His book was Minds in Many Pieces, and he used to get these dreams every morning. Um, very very detailed dreams. That's an interesting book. If you're interested in dreams, just read that book as well. Yeah, I just write them down in the morning, and then I just think about them. And generally, you know what I mean. Generally, I'm very sleepy in the morning, so once you write it down, it kind of implants it. It implants it in your mind. Whereas generally, if I didn't write it down, it would disappear from memory. I think Rose says that at the end of his meditation pamphlet. He says, like, direct mind thinking is like thinking. It's like the communication through dreams. It's like it's very subtle, whereas it can just go out your memory very quickly. Whereas like somatic thinking is like a percept goes through your mind and your body is reacting to it, and so it's a very energy draining. But this kind of thinking is direct mind thinking, or it's like dreams. Dreams is like direct thinking. Direct mind thinking is what the way Rose was talking about it, and so it's very subtle. It can be forgotten very easily. But then dreams that seem to be very significant have a way of sticking in your mind.
Do you, in terms of daily life, like, do you ever feel like daily life is similar to dreams and that it's sending you messages perhaps on some level? Like, do you ever interpret waking experience in a symbolic way?
Well, not in a symbolic way, probably not, no. Maybe everything is symbolic, but life, I guess, is your greatest master or greatest teacher. Hopefully not the master. It's the greatest teacher. But you're getting thrown back on yourself all the time, so that's life. Yeah, I don't know how to, yeah, it wouldn't be the same as dreams though. Dreams seem to be more coming from within. There's more connection to something that's more kind of spiritual, but it's also taking in your experience during the day, and somehow it's interpreting that and it's delivering something to your mind or something to your something to your conscious mind in a way that you're not going to be able to see during the waking time. So maybe that's the way that that works on the unconscious level.
Okay. But one other thing that you wrote that I wanted to read says, quote, I am currently doing a writing correspondence via email with a bunch of guys, which I find is the best way of keeping my head on self-inquiry. And I'm trying to feel into what I really, really want from life. I mean, I have several questions about this. Actually, can you say first off for you, what does self-inquiry even mean?
Yeah, that writing group is very good. With self-inquiry, what does it even mean? Well, I guess it means making an ass of yourself all the time. It's an effort to go within. It's an effort to talk about your feelings and reactions during your daily life. And it's kind of drawing you closer to what's real, what's essential, what is essential. And I suppose there's different levels in a writing group because some people will be directly looking at like the bigger questions, whereas other people will be still kind of in the malaise of life, looking to trying to be spiritual, but kind of trying to deal with their life probably more so. I think originally, I don't know what way I was, but it was I think when I started the group, I think I was in the malaise of life, and eventually I'm able to kind of be able to not be so attached to it and try and delve into deeper into what I want and what's what's a meaning for life into that question. It's really actually very difficult because at the turning point for me where I kind of felt that there was something deeper that I could actually kind of there was something deeper there that something more real to search for within like a kind of like a an end to existential angst and an end to it was during a virtual retreat where Art put Michael Gegenheimer on a spot. He said, Michael, how was your experience? And Michael kind of broke down when he was talking about his experience, and something happened to me during that point. It was like, shit, this is real. This is real. To that point, it was all psychological for me. It was kind of trying to I was doing kind of self-help stuff. I was trying to become kind of like the master of everything kind of thing. I didn't think there was any kind of, realization to be had and where everything can just kind of come to a head or something. Your path can come to a fruition through realizing who you are, the kind of fundamental kind of question. But something happened during that point where Michael Gegenheimer was just kind of explained his experience, whatever. That was the point for me where things turned.
Well, you mentioned making an ass of yourself.
Yeah,
Is that the correspondence group? Does that give you, say, some perspective on daily life? Is that part of what you all are doing? Is like examining your daily life? And I'm just guessing egotistical things that you've done, or trying to look at why you're doing what you're doing. Is that part of what's going on?
yeah, yeah. You do get perspective on your life and your attachment to things, your over attachment to things. I think for me, Robert S. de Rop's game, Master Games. It's like there's like all these lower games, and then the spiritual game is the only game without it's not going to engage an ego. And so basically, it's getting all these egos into view. And as many egos are unconscious, so it takes a while to kind of bring them out. That's been I never even read that book, but it's but that I was that diagram with the lower games and then the spiritual game is the number one game. That sticks with me. It's like seems to be the only game that there's no ego getting muddied up.
I almost I get the impression that maybe your dream work is and this email group sort of working on the same thing, but just from two different directions. Like one's in internal work and one's more external.
Well, the group work is I guess it'd be internal like as well because it's inspirational. Art runs it, so he's kind of pointing us towards kind of the bigger picture all the time. And so it's like he's holding a door open. Without that, I think without it'd be very difficult. Yeah. So the effort is to try and go within, and yeah, it is kind of backing away from all these attachments as well. On the external.
Do you think that dreams can give a sense of the eternal or the profound or God?
I think they're a guider. I think they're a guider for where you are at right now. I'm not sure whether you could say to they're totally divine in that sense, but I would say they're just a guider for where you are at now, right now, and that's it. That's your kind of what you need to be kind of looking at right now. I think I get the feeling that once all everything comes into the view, when there's nothing left, you're in a good place at that point. That could be between us at that point. I'm not sure. But then, yeah, but then there's other things as well in the group that we do. It's like we hold each other accountable to disciplines that we try to do, such like diet or whatever we're doing ourselves. We're trying to keep a regular meditation practice going. We'll check in to show, how well we're doing, keep kind of reality check on things. And so that's one of the most productive points about the group, so it's kind of just checking in on that level.
It's always so frustrating to me for myself. Like, one, we have this idea that, well, the inner guidance, right? The inner teacher, the inner guru that within us are all the answers, yet I can't get myself to keep a commitment to get up at 6:30 every morning and work out. What the hell kind of mechanism is this?
Yeah, there's a struggle going on. Yeah, discipline is the most hardest, the most difficult part of it. It's like trying to keep a regular routine, but it's also probably the greatest vehicle. But I think it's all about failure too, like because if you're 100% gung ho on disciplines, I think there's like the human aspect of knowing, right, that you're not perfect, that you're going to mess up here, and you pick yourself back up again. You try at it again, or maybe something's not working out because it's never going to work out and you need to maybe try a different discipline or something for a while. Maybe, so it's always kind of keeping a doubt on what you're doing, try it, and keep a doubt on what you're doing and try new things, as they come up. Try and get disciplined on that and see is that more productive use of your time.
I know you mentioned Tony Robbins in your chapter in the value that you found in his work. Perhaps people would have the impression that Tony Robbins is more about self-development and be all that you can be and so forth. I mean, it sounds like his work is still something that you find important. Does he have another dimension to his work beyond that?
Well, yeah, I just mentioned him. He was a part of my path, um, but still, he'd be in the Rops lower games. But like he has come up with some very good ways of doing things, like especially do a values list. Write out a values list. What gives you the most value? That's a way of tapping into what you want, tapping into what means something to you, as opposed to adopting values from the external and trying to comply with other people and stuff like that. So that for me was a turning point because it was like, shit, I don't have to look at my own values. That makes so much sense. Like that's going to make me happy if I just put a bit of effort into my own values. Because obviously that's where happiness must lie if you look at your own values, you know? So that was really good exercise. Um, but he's also a kind of a guy that also is like he's like he knows the information age is dead. The information age, you have to become the truth. You can't learn the truth through more and more knowledge. It's not going to be beneficial. You have to become the truth. So he was very much along that line, and that appealed to me at the time because it made sense. And Rose is all about that becoming the truth. But I don't know whether he was becoming the truth, but like he knew you had to become.
Did you have any aspect of when you were writing this chapter of, feeling that you wanted to be of service to others in writing, trying to pass on something of import to others?
Yeah, well, I like Richard Rose. I think Richard Rose had a very paternal, loving kind of aspect to him. So I think everything he did was very paternal. He was very like he didn't want to be your friend or anything necessarily, but he would tell you what was best for you. At the same time, I get the feeling from listening to him and reading his books and such. So yeah, so hopefully I had some of that kind of feeling in it that was, from what I've learned, that hopefully that it could be a benefit to someone else.
Do you recall what was your message in a bottle to your younger self?
Like I already had written Richard Rose's line, back away from the untruth. So that was my favorite. This is my favorite line that I would tell anyone: back away from the untruth. So the next one then was I always kind of like Tony Robbins was talking about like love is everything, living is giving, and commitment to he called it kunai. He trademarked that term, you know, commitment to continuous and never-ending improvement, like Kaizen in Japan. They have a Kaizen, but I think that's really it's really good advice. Like, but when I heard that originally, living is giving, love is everything. So living is giving. It felt like what's in it for me if I'm living is giving. So I give, so I get something back for me. And so that was it was very kind of on that level at that point. But then as looking back from it now, it's kind of more living is given. Everything is given to me, right? Everything. Like like electricity, I didn't make that. This house that I live in, the car I drive, everything is given. So in that sense, it's kind of more philosophical that living is given. You know what I mean? Everything is a given to me. Love is everything, and I'm pretty sure it is. I think it is. And then continuous improvement. And it reminds me that line Art said it. He said, inexorably driven towards perfection. A life inexorably driven towards perfection. He said that to one of the guys in the group, and I was just like, geez, that is really nice. That's really cool. Like, if you were able to set your life up on that kind of a trajectory, and you knew that you were somehow able to create a circumstance where you could, have a trajectory in that direction. You felt like had a trajectory in that direction. That would be a life worth living. You know what I'm saying? So that's inspiring to me. Definitely not perfection, like, or that way, but it certainly could long for that, you know what I mean?
There's a number of other chapters in this book. Have you read any of the other chapters?
Since you got me to do this interview, I thoroughly read it. Went back and read it again.
Is there one that particularly stands out for you that you really enjoyed?
No, there's not one. I kind of take little bits. I take little bits from each one that could, the one thing that kind of stood out the most, the one line that stood out the most was in Rob's piece, and he was talking to his friend on his deathbed, and his friend said to him, um, "There's only one choice we ever had to make, and that was my will or thy will." I wonder if that seems so obvious to some guy in a deathbed, but and talk to a person in their life, it's not a straight cut, like. So it's interesting that he could kind of was able to kind of categorically say that at that point. Yes, that's the kind of thing that would stick with me. That kind of and other things then is kind of honest things that kind of stuck out. And in Micah's piece, it was like once you kind of see the absurdity of something that you're doing or something you're saying, and you get to see it on such a level that you can't bear the absurdity of it anymore. And yeah, so it's kind of it's something that kind of once you start seeing something in a more obvious light, it's hard to kind of unsee it, that type of thing. And then it's just as always, like with seekers, what I found originally when I started doing group work was like I always thought everyone was psychologically like me. I thought I'm the same as everyone psychologically and everything. But that's probably because I was projecting everything from my mind. What I realize is everyone is different. Seems to be kind of have their own struggles, different struggles. So that's always kind of like an eye opener for me. Like that there's such a variety of life circumstances and such a variety of different kind of hang-ups and such. So it's like, but then other things they can be closely related to.
I was just going to say I had a similar reaction to reading the chapters. Is that I would catch little glimpses either of myself in certain of the stories or parts of the stories that I would kind of bookmark internally and say, "Oh, that's a very, very interesting idea. I want to come back to that, ponder that a little more." I think that's one of the great values of this book is that you've got. I'm actually not sure how many people are in it. almost a dozen people maybe who are really writing about difficult aspects of their psychology and their experience to describe, and have put a lot of effort into trying to communicate. And you don't you don't get that opportunity that often to, in one book, see so many different facets of the spiritual surge, the psychological, the emotional.
The value of the struggle, like you can see, like the struggle.
Yeah. Yeah, in every story. I was curious if, after participating in this, if you've had any new angles or intentions or practices that perhaps came as a result of this, or any new insights perhaps into yourself.
Yeah, what it did do was it actually brought Jim Rohn and Tony Robbins back into my playlist, YouTube playlist. Don't know whether that's a good thing or bad thing, but I think just on the kind of like the healthy health level, Tony Robbins has been helpful. I've taken up this kind of breathing exercise, and I've kind of been looking at breath in relation to moods and such like that, so that like if the mood is in a bad mood or something, there's a corresponding kind of breath that kind of comes along with that. So what I'm doing is trying to incorporate like a breathing practice into 3 times a day, talking about like the a ratio of 1, 4, 2. Breathing for 7 seconds, hold for 28, and then breathe out for 16. So I think I think it's good little practice to do, because I think it makes you more conscious of your breath, and in every situation where your breath is being restricted or something like that, so you can kind of get more. He claims that there's a lot of energy to be had in there, so I'm just going to practice that and see how that's very superficial. I was struggling with that question that you had on the email. Is there anything that grew out of the book? But I'm pretty sure on some level there does something grow out of it, to be a part of such a project, like to have it does, it confirms your conviction in what you're doing, and in your commitment to finding the truth. You put it in a book. I mean, you've took the time and the effort to try and do that, and then it's in a book, like, so it kind of it confirms a commitment, and it grows stronger, that commitment. It's becomes your fact status, becomes part of that. So I think it certainly does. Whether I can appreciate how much it has inspired me to kind of focus in on things more clearly, I'm pretty sure it has. I'm not sure I'm aware of to the degree to which that is.
Let me turn to my compatriot here. Alex, do you have any questions that you would like to ask?
Yeah, I was curious about this. There's a quote in the book. It says, I am putting emphasis on seeing rather than doing. My doer energy is off the charts. So I wanted to see, like, given your perspective and your personality, let's say, what does that mean for your doer energy to be off the charts? And then how do you balance that with seeing? And then what's the relationship between those two, the doing and the seeing? Or is there one?
That was a quote that someone said. That he said, the reason for meditation is just you're seeing as opposed to doing. So that struck a chord with me as kind of being true. And I think the power is in just seeing. If you can see things, that's it. Like that's the magic. So like I lead a busy life. I'm family and work. My kind of tendency was to do kind of productive thinking. Because sitting down for an hour was not something that appealed to me, or that I thought could be productive in any way. So, but it was always productive thinking. I think I'm reaching an end of that. Not that I ever will, though. But I was reaching an end to thinking that this is going to be the be all and end all. And so I kind of wanted to try out, a sit down meditation routine, to try and develop a rapport in that kind of setting, and try and see the benefits of that. So I'm still trying to establish meditation discipline. So I'm struggling with it. I keep coming back to it.
Do you see a way that you talked about experience, and I think you mentioned going through experience, making an ass out of oneself. Does that, going through those experiences, does that lead you towards a sense of perspective in regard to humility? Or do you see humility as part of the path or one of the ingredients?
Yeah, I think so. I think Jim Burns says like it takes a crash for the outer man to admit that there's an inner man. And I think and Rose said that the inner man suffers the outer man. So I think there's like a dance going on. Like there's you have to crash somehow because not that I'm promoting people to crash, but I'm just saying that I want certainty. I want certainty. The ego wants certainty, but the certainty is kind of insanity. It's related. So then, once you think you know something and you need to challenge someone who has an opposite view of you, and then you're found to be wrong, and then I don't know. It's like that feeling you ever get like totally red in the face. You go scarlet, and it's like there's humility there in that. You're kind of like you're just like that's good because you're kind of getting back to something that's able to see, something, the inner man. It's a kind of a connection. You're getting close to something there. I had like experiences where on the writing group where I make an ass of myself or something that I completely wrong, and then I said to myself, this is like psychic bleeding, and I think Franklin Mary Wolf actually used that term that he had a lot of psychic bleeding up before his realization, but I'm not sure it's related to that. But it's interesting. I said it felt like psychic bleeding. I was like, Jesus, he actually said that as well. But I think it's different. But it's like some part of you is dying, Some part of you is just embarrassment. Yeah.
You give me the idea there that with embarrassment, you have this moment to look at yourself with a different light or perspective, and that there's also maybe an openness to it. You have a moment to be open, like maybe to something new.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you get beneath that thing that was strutting about thinking it knew everything. So you get beneath that. But then obviously something else picks up a new thread, I don't know. Are these like these kind of branches that you cling onto as you go? I don't know. But then I think it's a battle, isn't it? Like, is it a battle? Because what you want is in your heart, right? So you're going to fight for it. You're going to try and put it out there and expose it. So these are things that you're tightly connected to that mean something to you. So it's in your heart. So you want to kind of put it out there and fight for it, but it may not be right or whatever. So you're going to suffer the loss, but it's always good, it's always good when you.
I wonder if your dream work is also giving you, we were talking about embarrassment, but I'm wondering if your dream work also gives you another perspective an outside perspective looking in.
Yeah, it surely does. Yeah, yeah. And it's a part of you as well, you see. And so the dreams being a part of you, that's your experience. And so that's why somehow you can transcend kind of old feelings or something, or maybe connect with new feelings or something. There's something in the trade-off there. There's something there's the magic there that's in a dream and it's your experience kind of a thing. And it's a higher experience. It's something the higher is speaking to the lower.
Do you feel like there's instances where you've gotten guidance on what action to take next, or if you're at a juncture, which way to go?
No, no. It's more dreams would be more just kind of like on a psychological level, just looking um at the self kind of thing, looking at the behavior and the beliefs. I do try with oracle cards to do for higher intuition to see is there something like that, but that's questionable.
Any luck on that?
No, it's questionable. But sometimes it feels like that there's some kind of if a card keeps appearing, a similar card keeps appearing, it seems to be some kind of like, okay, some kind of message here, something like that. But
And then the last one I had written down was while you were talking about dreams, it seems like you've done a fair amount of work as far as understanding the symbols and the Jungian aspects of it. Do you feel like you're able to not only this is applied looking at your own dreams. Do you feel like you might be able to help others understand their dreams?
I can just tell them what helps me. But I think every person has their own has their own symbols that mean something to them, and they'll know that through their own feelings of what the symbol means. It's like checking in whatever symbol appears in their dream, and then checking into the feeling that they have for that symbol. That's what that means to them, as opposed to someone telling them, like looking up at a list of Google definitions of what things mean. That's not it. Like it's what means something to you, and your feeling towards what the symbols mean in your dream, in your life. And I suppose that could mean that you have to be more, like the more you are aware of yourself during the day, what things mean to you, because you mightn't even know what things mean to you. So therefore, in dreams, it might be pointless because you won't know how to interpret that. It's just like watching a movie at that point.
I don't, you, Sean, didn't do a lot of dream work specifically that I know of. And yet I do remember you telling me about some dream that was high definition, more real than this waking life. And that's, I've never had anything like that. And I'm wondering, so I'm wondering if, um, I'm wondering if you could tell us, or I don't know if Patrick said anything like that, and then maybe you, Sean, could tell us what that was for you and what the effect of it was.
Yes, I had a dream, and in this moment, I only remember bits and pieces of it. But the what was most striking about it was this quality of high definition, which I don't even know if we had that term high
We
definition
had
at
the
the
term, you
time.
said it. I
Really?
understood the
Okay.
term, but I have no idea. Like, I can't imagine. So it sounds like you might as well tell me you were living in the fourth dimension or something.
Well, it's simply the idea that as I look around me right now, the world has certain coloration to it. The world has a certain dimension quality to it. Like it has depth to it. And so this dream was as if I 10x'd the color and 10x'd the energy. It was as if I could feel and see the energy of everything that was in this space. And it's kind of like when do you remember that movie, What Dreams May Come, with Robin Williams, where he goes into these afterlife states, and they're a mix of like animation and real life, and they're very vivid colors and so forth. In a way, maybe it was a little bit like that, but it had a solidity to it. And I think that's the real HD, the high def part that I'm talking about. As I look around, I think that this is solid, but it was nothing compared. This was dreamlike compared to that dream. It was as if I had dreamed myself into reality, and that was reality. That's how alive it was.
Did you do anything in that state?
I in this moment, I don't recall much in the way of details. It seemed like there was a girl, a gal in the dream, I remember, and I think maybe I had some romantic interest in her, but it was very much that mix of nostalgia and romance. It was like romance. It wasn't this, I don't recall a sexual coloration to it. It was this romance, love, nostalgia connected with her. And then I just remember like there were some paths through the woods, and then there was some sort of village or town, because I remember there were buildings that I saw that also had that incredible vividness and solidity about them that were nothing like buildings here in our neighborhood. But I don't remember any sort of adventure or drama or anything like that connected to the dream. And nor do I, what was the message, Patrick? For me, the message wasn't necessarily emotional. It was just this conviction that, well, there's something more real than this waking life. And I experienced it. Now, was that enlightenment? No. Did it answer any questions? No. And would I call it a spiritual awakening? No. But it was a message that there's something more real and you're not living in it.
Did that come out of nowhere, or do you feel like you had done something to earn that message? Or was it just, do you feel like it just arrived like a bottle?
Yeah, I don't even remember at this point. Because this is 30 years ago now.
You have a
Almost.
journal.
Yeah, I have it in my closet here. There's a crate full of journals that we could dig through and maybe find it.
A clue.
But no, I was probably like Patrick, paying attention to my dreams and thinking about the symbolism. But I was definitely not. I was not trying to.
No lucid dreaming.
I wasn't doing lucid dreaming or any practices like that.
I had
yeah,
one dream. I had one dream like that
okay.
where it was where it's kind of like extrasensory. Would you say like the high definition was kind of like extrasensory? It was like more than you felt in any other kind of a
Yeah,
life is what you were
more.
saying. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's more fuller or something.
yes.
Um, yeah, I had a dream where it was like when I started practicing celibacy, and I had this dream where I was walking in the dream. It was like these massive raindrops were coming down, and it was so cleansing. Just we're a bunch of us from the village. We were all running up into like a denser kind of rain shower. We're all running towards it, and it was like these big, massive raindrops coming down. We were loving it. Like it wasn't like you were running away from the shower. We were running into it. This was lovely, and it was like these big, massive raindrops were just coming down. It was just so. It felt very it was really cleansing. The whole thing, just the whole dream was kind of like, and I woke up and it was like, whoa, that was awesome. It was like great feeling. It was a great feeling from it. Like it's like really positive.
Are you able to carry those feelings from the dream with you throughout the day or for a little while?
No, no, I think they're kind of symbolic probably to turning points in your life. And there was one point where I always felt like inferior to my brother. I never drove tractors at home, or my brother was always driving tractors. I never drove tractor. But in this one dream, I felt I got into the driver's seat and Michael had to sit in the back. And that's when I felt like I kind of wasn't inferior anymore. It was at that point, and this dream was like it was like saying, look, there's a shift happening where you're not feeling inferior anymore. So it's like dreams can kind of come in like at points and kind of show you where you might have made a shift in some certain way.
Thank you, Patrick. Well, I think that's about it. It just struck me to say that this book, the new book by the TAP Foundation, Message in a Bottle, Reflections on the Spiritual Path that we've been discussing with Patrick. In a way, it's like getting to have a conversation with a bunch of different, really thoughtful and insightful spiritual seekers all at once. It's a lot of different stories and insights from quite the gamut of different personalities and lives and lifestyles, and both inspiring and insightful at the same time. So I highly recommend that people check out this book. And I want to thank you, Patrick, for taking
Thank
the
you.
time. Are there any last thoughts that you wanted to share?
Yeah, just thanks for everyone who was involved in the book that I could be a part of it because it means a lot. It's good. It was a good experience to do, and it's all very professionally done. Everything is great. So thanks very much.
Thank you for listening to this edition of Journals of Spiritual Discovery. I'm your host, Sean Nevins. For more information about today's guest, as well as more interviews, books, and other resources, go to spiritualteachers.org. That's spiritualteachers.org.